Let's go across to our guests at 9 a.m. this morning here in Bharat. It's about 11:30 a.m. in Beijing. In about a half an hour to 45 minutes from now, we should see the leaders emerge, the bilaterals conclude, whether it'll all be positive. There'll be something to take away from there. Everybody is watching with bated breath. Andrew K.P. Leung, China strategist, joining us from Hong Kong. Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan, former NSAB member, is also with us. Rohan Gunaratna, author and terrorism expert, with us. Rajiv Dograji, former diplomat, with us. And we also have Sierra Claire, foreign policy analyst. My namaste to everybody. Thank you very much. General Narasimhan, exactly my point. Exactly my point. When Iran weaponizes the Strait of Hormuz and trade tries to block it, had China moved in to say, listen, you can fight your war, we'll help you with intelligence, we'll help you indirectly, directly, however, but keep the international trade open, don't let it affect. And that would have been perhaps the biggest show of leadership by the Chinese, saying that what the Americans can't do, the Chinese have done. Did Xi Jinping miss a trick there because of the leverage, like you said, that China has on Iran? That's one question that remains. I'm going to bring in Sarah Claire. One more thing, viewers. Interesting that AI runs on minerals and not just code. And look at the dependence on China that even America has. When it comes to server boards and circuitry, we need gold, palladium, tin, copper, platinum, and tantalum. US 100% import reliance on tantalum, tin 73%, palladium 36%, copper 45%. Even with respect to heat sinks, 47% import reliance on aluminum, 45% on copper. Critical minerals, gallium 100% import reliant, germanium 100%, arsenic 100%, indium 100%, tantalum I've said already, and rare earth elements 80%. And most of this comes from countries like China, Canada. These are the countries that they're dependent on for getting all of this. And there's more: storage, hard drives, platinum, palladium, rare earths, barite, which is again import, 100%, 800 to 80% import dependent. Countries largely China, Canada, Africa, and of course the supply chain leverage. Sarah Claire, is Trump going into this meeting with not much to bargain? And would you agree with the other panelists that like past presidents, they will actually give up more than getting away from China in Beijing?
Well, to your first question, yes, the China maintains leverage on the critical minerals front. However, President Trump is the first president in my lifetime, at least, that has actually taken steps to create supply chains for critical minerals and rare earths for the United States. So that could all be changing as the years go on, thanks to the work that President Trump has started. And to your second question, I think that President Trump is, you would just have to look at his track record from his first term. He dealt with China very well in his first term. And so I think that he is going to, be able to do the same in this meeting as well.
But do you believe that he'll be able to ring a bargain given what's happened? Because many believe that Trump is more reliant and they've realized they cannot do with China, and China has gamed that already. So how do you sit at a bargaining table and, reading the room, the way Xi Jinping is approaching this meeting, the way President Trump is approaching this meeting, will Trump supporters be happy with whatever he comes away with, or will they look at what he has had to give up in the bargain?
Well, I think that, what President Trump comes away with and the way the American people view it is going to depend on other economic factors as well. The American people, we do need to work on some economic issues, and some of those are domestic and policy related as well. And that's why the American people feel frustrated with the economy. In terms of, President Trump's leverage, China is having a real estate market crisis. They have banks that are closing or reaching insolvency. And as you mentioned earlier, 50% of their oil and energy supply comes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is currently being blockaded. So I think President Trump also has quite a bit of leverage.
Well, leverage or not, General Narasimhan, both Xi Jinping has sacked some of his closest aides, military and otherwise. There has been a full reset there. And even as this morning, we are given to understand the CIA has raided Tulsi Gabbard's office. So there is a trust deficit on either side with their own leadership and with their own rank and file, even as they don't trust each other. So how is this going to move forward to help the world?
2 points I want to cover from what the earlier discussions are. One is, of course, Hormuz has been open to China right from the word go. Iran said the first ships that will be allowed to cross over Hormuz was from China.
Yeah.
So China was actually sitting pretty on this. That is number one. Number two, on the critical minerals, there is a mutual dependency. Like, for example, China may have all the processing and having the leadership there, but the problem is they have to be converted into products, and that products are going to be done elsewhere. So, like for example, the H200 chips from NVIDIA, which was allowed to be sold and it's still not getting sold. So there is a mutual dependency there. So there may be some kind of understanding in this which will happen at some point in time. These are the two issues. On the other issues, like for example, the trust deficit, please also look at when US sanctioned certain refineries in China, China was bold enough to say don't follow that sanction. So that shows a sense of confidence that the Chinese have developed over a period of time to take on even the American sanctions when they are placed in against Chinese entities. So they are actually going from a little stronger position into this entire dialogue. That is number one, like Andrew mentioned. Mr. Trump was to come in first week of April. It got postponed because of the Iran war. He said, I'll finish the Iran war and then come. Iran war is not finished, but he has come there. So basically, Mr. Trump seemed to be coming in from a little weaker position in this entire dialogue.
Yeah.
That is number one. Number two, there are problems of trade, etc., which have been going on for a long period of time. They would like to reach some stability because both of them need it. It is not only China needs it, or it's not only America needs it. Both of them need that market. Both of them need the interdependency there. So therefore, I think they can come to some kind of an understanding on the trade issues, which of course is very close to Mr. Trump's heart. The other thing is about Taiwan. There was a mention that he's going to talk to China about selling the weapons to Taiwan. I'm not sure whether he will do it. If he does it, it will be a climb down in the American position towards Taiwan. So that will again work in favor of China to that extent. They'll have more control on this issue. On the other issue like Iran, on the Iranian issue, what I think we need to understand is we need to understand the psyche of the Iranian people who are actually doing this fight. That is a major problem that we find in all the Western wars that they fight. They don't understand the psyche of the opponent. Today, Iran is fighting for its survival.
Yeah.
So he is fighting with his back to the wall. He is going to push back as much as he can to ensure his survival. So there are only two issues. One is, of course, the nuclear enrichment. The other one is release of the assets that have been frozen by the US.
Yeah.
I think the second one is doable. Partly, at least, it can be done. On the uranium, if they can come to some kind of an understanding, probably the Strait of Hormuz will start opening up. So on this, my own reading is China's leverage on Iran may be there, but I think it will be limited because Iran's survival is at stake. So if you put all this in one basket, I think it is going to be a tussle in this particular visit of Mr. Trump. And maybe that China will come up with a little higher, better hand is what I feel.
If you read the room, everybody agrees that China will drive a harder bargain and emerge a little more richer out of this equation. But what is the big getaway or takeaway for President Trump? One has to remember that China is not financially or economically as stable or as robust as it was about 8 to 10 years ago. It is in a far weaker position because there is a real estate slump. Domestic economy is sluggish. There has been the trade, lack of trade because it's a trade-driven economy. The lack of trade has also impacted China, and Xi Jinping would want to power those production facilities up back again and to bring back trade to the levels that they have, because there is a larger blueprint or vision that President Xi and the CCP have to achieve on Mao's blueprint by 2047. Now, all of those aspects aside, coming back to this bilateral, Will there be a thaw? Is there a point of negotiation where Trump can impact? Trump will yield somewhere, but they will also get to take away from another. For us viewers, we need the energy crisis resolved. We need a resolution to the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. We need those international waters to be free for trade. What's going to happen? Will these two big nations have an impact and influence that? Or is it now beyond their remit too? We'll have to wait and watch. We take a very short break. See you on the other side. Movement forward. A lot of people will be reading into what happens. Many interpretations of the tone of the two leaders. There seemed to be certain comfort, but from the Chinese point of view, it was more business-like. Rohan Gunaratna, Rajiv Dogra, Sierra Claire, Lieutenant General S.L. Narasimhan and Andrew K.P. Leung continue to stay on with us. Let's try and go across to them and get their comments. Sierra Claire, is Trump at his lowest in terms of not just approval ratings, but also his ability to push through his policies in the U.S. right now? The courts have defanged his entire weaponization of tariffs. There is pressure internally. There are a lot of people within the Trump administration who are being shafted. There are unconfirmed reports of a CIA raid into the DIA's office, that is Tulsi Gabbard's office, this morning. He's also being questioned about going into this war without having a plan of what the off-ramp is, what the end objectives are. There are reports that the U.S. arsenal is depleted. It's going to take another 6 years to replenish it. The regional allies in the Persian Gulf are very unhappy because the Americans were not able to protect their interests. That's the feeling on ground. Would you agree, disagree?
Well, on the military arsenal issue, it's actually China who is, facing an uncomfortable situation right now, because all of their systems that were in Iran and Venezuela and all of these places where the U.S. has been operating recently were proven to be completely ineffective against U.S. military equipment. So I think that is more on them than it is on us. And in terms of President Trump's agenda, yes, he is absolutely facing domestic challenges to implementing his policies. And the deep state is very active in trying to block him, and I think that just shows that he's making real progress, because he is implementing change, and people are losing their all of their power that they maintained, and all of this NGO complex that was going on. All of these things are starting to change, and it's very slow, but it's starting to change, and that's why you're seeing them fight back so hard.
Well, now we've just got confirmation of what was doing the rounds, that the CIA has just raided Tulsi Gabbard's office and seized documents related to John F. Kennedy's assassination, MK Ultra, and more. More of these files, boxes and boxes, which they were set to declassify as per Trump's orders, but those files have now been taken away. They've been taken away. Now, this is another issue. It's a sidebar, viewers, for now, but Trump will have to address this, and I'm sure he will be questioned about this too when he comes out and if there is an interaction with the waiting media in Beijing. But going back to our guest, Rohan Gunaratna, Sri Lanka will be watching this, Singapore will be watching this entire region will be watching. Would you not want to ask two powerful nations that control about 40% or account for about 40% of the world's GDP or economy itself, that why is it that they have not been able to open up the Strait of Hormuz? Why is it that other nations are suffering? Economies are being upended because of this. Growth stories of nations are being impeded because of this. What kind of world order is this then?
Iran wants to be a continental power. Iran wants to be a great power. Iran poses very significant security challenges to the Gulf countries and also to the West and the rest of the world. Iran is building a functional nuclear program. According to the Omani mediators, they have sufficient enriched uranium to build 11 bombs. Iran has missile capabilities. They attacked 11 countries, and these capabilities are beyond Gulf region. Third is, of course, Iran has Shia and other proxies that have mounted terrorist attacks in the region. So Iran has to be addressed more comprehensively, not only by the United States, but also by the Gulf countries and the rest of the world. And I believe that China, because China is a key recipient of energy supplies from the Straits of Hormuz, can play a very important role in preventing another war. Otherwise, of course, the United States will strike Iran again.
But the larger question is, if Iran has got ballistic missiles, who's helping them build those missiles? They need rare earth minerals for that too. They need critical minerals and chips for those ballistic missiles to also function, to be able to talk. If they are able to build these kind of facilities, if they are making kamikaze drones, those drones also need all of these critical minerals along with various other composites, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. So who's supplying them, and where are they getting their supplies?
Well, as American leaks have themselves shown, uh, China is helping a friend in need. So is Russia. So, as far as Iran is concerned, it does not, according to most reports, have any difficulty in replenishing whatever it lost during that 1 month war. It is America which is facing problems. But coming to another issue, uh, you showed visuals of Mar-a-Lago meeting in 2017.
Yeah.
It is there right now. At that meeting, Trump had told Xi that together we can solve all the problems of the world. Today, Trump seems to be the only problem of the world, because had it not been for this war, the energy issue would not have been a major headache for the rest of the world. And it is likely to remain a major headache for the rest of the world for the next few years, because what has been destroyed in Gulf of energy facilities is not going to be easily repaired. Some say, for example, the Qatar gas installation at Ras will take 5 years to be fully repaired. So what Trump has done by starting this war is not only posing a long-term energy issue for the rest of the world. I'm not sure whether China is so critically dependent, because some uh, observations have been made that 80% of China's import is from Iran.
Yeah.
That is not true. Iran's 80% export of energy may be to China, but China has huge dependence on Russia both for its oil and gas imports. So the countries which will suffer are countries like India and others.
Or is it going to push the world, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra? I'm interrupting you here, but is it going to push the world towards looking at at renewable energy, moving away from non-renewables? The other part is, who would you have blamed had Iran weaponized and become a nuclear power? Had Iran decided to act on its promise made by the late Ayatollah Khamenei that they're going to destroy Israel by August 2027, and a huge barrage and a reset? Who would one have blamed? One would have turned around and told the Americans and the Israelis, you knew and yet you did nothing. The entire same Gulf countries, all of Europe would have turned around. If Iran can turn and hurl a missile where they said they won't have ICBMs or intercontinental ballistic missiles and send two towards Diego Garcia, what stops them from turning those around and sending it Europe's way?
Well, Iran, Ayatollah, whom you quoted, had also said that we will never use nuclear option. So as far as using the nuclear option is concerned, both America and Israel have said repeatedly during this war and after the war that we can use nuclear option. Secondly, when countries violate international law, and in this case, both America and China are guilty, both have repeatedly violated international law, whether it is salami slicing by China, or its denial of Philippines' rights over its own islands, or America's multiple wars. For example, taking a president of Venezuela, kidnapping him and bringing him to USA. which international laws
Yeah.
sanctions.
See, one may not agree with it, but General Narasimhan, if somebody has got to be the monitor of the room, there is a hegemon, and that hegemon has got to protect the global interest because most global interests are allied to it. See, today our rupee is struggling against the dollar because there is dollar dependency. So there is a current economic structure or a world structure which has been set since the Second World War. Now, if one wants to disrupt it, it has to be at the cost of some of the others. Now, are we okay with Iran enriching uranium at 60%? Because for civil purposes, they don't need it to, but need to enrich it more than 4%. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if at 60%, that means they were on the verge of developing nuclear capability. Iran may tell the world, I'm not doing a lot of things, but they were. And that's what the Israelis have been able to prove. Today, Iran's capability has been pushed back by at least a decade and a half. But this aspect of gaming the blockade of Hormuz, is this the biggest slip by the Americans? And should the world suffer for this? Yes.
Okay. There are 2-3 points. One
Yeah.
is, of course, on the efficacy of the Chinese weapons, which was talked about. I will not dismiss them that way, because we need to give the credit to whatever weapons that they are using, and some effectiveness has been seen. So therefore, I will not underestimate the efficacy of the Chinese weapons at this point in time, unless it is proven otherwise. That is one. Number two, you see, weaponizing trade, weaponizing certain things has always been happening. US has been weaponizing the dollar and the sanctions.
Yeah.
China has been weaponizing trade. We have seen that. So it is nothing new. So when Iran does it, then everybody is up in the arms because everybody else is affected at this point in time. So the weaponizing of the trade, weaponizing of oil, weaponizing of certain things has always been going on. So that is something that I think we need to keep in mind. The other thing is, there is a saying which I read somewhere earlier, which said that, US is trying to open the Strait of Hormuz, which is already open before the war.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
So basic thing is, you created a problem. You thought you will finish it very quickly. You are not able to do it. Now you are trying to now get back to the position in which you were in before the war started. So this is the kind of situation that, and this underestimation, like for example, Russia underestimated Ukraine. Israel underestimated Gaza and Lebanon. The same Palestine. Same way, I think US also underestimated the Iran's capabilities and the will to fight. So this is the miscalculation that has actually led to all this. So now the way to get out is, I think it is better, my request would be to say that both these countries, US and Iran, have to sit together and then talk it out and then come to a midway path and then get over with this. Otherwise, this is going to continue, because if Iran is stopping the Strait of Hormuz, US is also doing the blockade.
Yeah.
So it is not helping either way. So this is and in the US, the inflation is going up month on month. So it is not helping the US either. So I think all the parties are actually affected in this entire war. I think they need to come to an understanding, and we have always been saying, India's position will always be that diplomacy should prevail and people should talk and come to a solution, is what we have always been saying. I will say that again here today in your channel.
Yeah, but that diplomacy is not going anywhere. Those talks are frustrating because Iran is not willing to give up the enriched uranium. They are not willing to give up their nuclear program. They want to continue their ballistic missiles program, which America is not agreeing to. Point is, we've got to move away from one hegemon, then you've got to remove the dependency on that hegemon. That's not the case right now. And to a large extent, even America is to be blamed, because they were not able to read the room with respect to the Iranians and what they were developing over the last 4.5 decades under the Ayatollah regime. But Sarah Claire, what's Trump's end game? Does he believe that he's going to be able to resolve this by the 4th of July? Because clearly there is some intent to try and resolve this before the 4th of July. Because it will take at least 6 to 8 weeks for Americans to forget the pain that's been caused over the last 3 months, according to Trump's rule book, where he believes every 6 weeks he can turn the narrative.
Well, I think that President Trump wants to resolve this quickly, partially because the midterms are coming up, but also because that's good for everybody and it's good for the world. And I think that this meeting with President Xi, you know, I'm sure this is going to be discussed between the two, and maybe President Trump was thinking that this could be a last chance at diplomacy, to see if the Chinese could do anything, or are willing to do anything, to move the Iranians in the right direction. And, you know, so he wants to give this a shot, and before moving on to the next phases of returning more to the military side of things that would actually wrap this up.